Welcome to our presentation on the new C70 Canon Cinema camera. My name's Berkeley and I'm with Pictureline, and we're really excited about this special announcement today. We have Mike Edwards with Canon Cinema products, and here we go, Mike.
Thanks. Glad to be here today, Berkeley. Wonderful day to share some exciting news.
Exactly. We're very excited. So can you tell us a little bit about this new edition?
To start with, it's our first Cinema EOS camera with the new RF lens mount native into the body. So that means you can use our brand new EOS RF mount lenses that have some very sophisticated advancements in them with things like optical quality and image stabilization.
I had one question. What if I have a bunch of standard EF glass? Can I use those on there?
Absolutely. So the RF lens mount system, both with our mirrorless cameras and our Cinema EOS camera, this Cinema EOS camera, they're designed with RF mount so that you can use EF mount lenses. So here's one of our lens mount adapters. We have got several to choose from, ranging in price and feature sets that I won't go into right now, but basically to answer your question more directly, yes, you can use your EF mount lenses. Simply all you do is take the adapter. There's a white dot and a red dot on this adapter, for instance, so I could use an EFS lens from the APS-C size sensor cameras, or with the red dot, use the full frame lenses. Now the full frame lens goes right onto the, this is a full frame lens, I should say. This one's a tilt shift lens. So I've got it all contorted here. So some people may be looking at that thinking, wow, he's putting a broken lens on there. It's all nothing straight on it. But I put this on here just to show you can use certainly all the EF lenses, including the specialty lenses, super telephoto, tilt shift in this case, macro lenses, you name it. Those will certainly all go on there. And by using the that, you know, I'm going to get a odd looking result on the front here from the tilt shift. But again, just showing you can use that. Now, as I was talking about as far as features, you get full capability out of the lens still with an EF lens. You get full speed autofocus, you get face detection autofocus still, all that fun stuff, image stabilization. So if you have EF lenses, you know, use them. There's no reason to not use them and take advantage of the full range of the EF lenses. So there's currently 3 existing adapters from the EOS R mirrorless cameras, and we're going to add a 4th adapter, which is dedicated to this body specifically. And it is a EF to RF mount adapter 0.71x. What happens with this adapter is that it's going to take that full frame lens coverage and shrink it down to ideally covering the Super 35 area. So my full frame lens, when I put it on here with this new mount adapter, will give me the same angle of view I'm used to on a full frame camera. So for instance, a 24 millimeter wide angle lens on a full frame camera, I'm gonna get the same angle, that same 24 millimeter view that I would get on a full frame camera on the Super 35 sensor.
All right, Mike, what EF lenses is this new adapter compatible with?
There's going to be 3 initially, and we're hoping that list will get bigger. But the initial 3 are the EF 16 to 35 millimeter f2.8 L version 3, the EF 24 to 70 L f2.8 version 2, and the 24 to 105 f4 L version 2, and that's an IS lens.
So Canon built this new camera with a certain kind of shooter in mind. Could you tell us about that kind of shooter that this would be perfect for?
Absolutely. Well, you can tell by the small size, it's wonderful for run and gun applications. It's really not much bigger at all, for about the same size as some of our DSLR models. So it's very easy to handhold. It's very lightweight. I can imagine shooting with this for hours and not really getting fatigued at all. For the run and gun shooter, I want to point out one of the really exciting changes to this, and that is the quick boot up time. And that's something you don't really see on spec sheets. The power switch is right on top, so I can handhold the camera and just flick it on, and it boots up in about 3 seconds, or maybe even a little bit less. I'm kind of slow on my stopwatch thumb, so I think I don't give it a fair shake on time, but I can time it at 3 seconds, which means it's probably faster than 3 seconds on boot up, and it's ready to shoot. Typically, a cinema camera takes sometimes up to 10 seconds to boot up and be ready to shoot. So if you want to be ready for whatever moment, you can certainly do that. That said, if I leave the camera on all the time, I've got a very, very long battery life with these batteries, multiple hours, even with just the smallest battery. I have what's called a pre-record mode, which I can go in and it will buffer 3 seconds always of shooting. And what that means is if I hit the record button, it will lay down in the file what happened the 3 seconds immediately prior to me pushing this button. So for the run and gun shooter, maybe shooting weddings, maybe shooting a reality show, that pre-record option is really fantastic, because usually by the time we push the button, the moment's already happened. And if you have that enabled, you can certainly lay down that. It's like going back in time, 3 seconds.
Okay, Mike, can I have you touch on a few of the advantages of this new C70 over, say, a mirrorless or a DSLR? You can touch on a few things and we'll get more in depth to it also.
Absolutely. C70 really is a cinema camera. One of the things people ask is, will it take still pictures? No, it's not. Well, technically, yes, it will take a still photo, but it's just a video frame grab. So if you're going to take a still image from this, it's just as easy just to go into your editing software and do a frame grab out of that. That said, it is designed to be a cinema camera for non-stop video operation, really. So a DSLR or mirrorless camera, you have a clip limit of 29 minutes and 59 seconds. You do not have that with this. You can keep recording until your media runs out. Also, even at the highest performance settings of 4K, 120 frames per second, you do not have a time limit on that. You can keep going. It is a fan-cooled cinema camera. You can't hear the fan whatsoever, but there's vents here you can see. There's a very low-speed fan that moves air through to keep the camera cool. If you look at a DSLR or mirrorless camera, they tend to be sealed up for weather resistance and for still photography, frankly. And what that does is it also locks in the heat in those cameras. So you can run into thermal time limitations on some of the higher performance recording settings, maybe if you're shooting 8K or 4K at high frame rates, you'll have a thermal time limit with some cameras in that realm. So they're really designed around, the DSLR and mirrorless cameras are great. You can do great video with them, but that's not their primary purpose in life. They're still cameras that happen to shoot video, and they're really multi-purpose cameras. This is really designed to be a video camera all the time.
Perfect. Okay, I've already gone through some of the specs. I've cheated a little bit. I'm excited about this. One thing that caught my mind, it says it has a DGO sensor. Tell us about that sensor.
So the DGO sensor we brought out with our higher-end C300 Mark III. And the neat thing is Canon has put that same sensor in the C70. So that's one of the things that thrills me with this camera, is that it's a smaller, lower price cinema camera, but it doesn't cut out the high-end features. You've got the high-end features in this little camera. So the DGO sensor gives you 16 plus stops of dynamic range. And how that works is for every frame that the camera takes, it's actually taking 2 at the same time, is the easy way to explain it. So one for the highlights, one more for the shadows. and it kind of electronically puts those together. That's the nickel explanation. It's not taking, unlike some other cameras that have done something like that before, where it would take one highlight exposure, then take a shadow exposure and put them together. Since those systems used two separate frames at two separate points in time, you could have some motion anomalies with that system. That's not how this works. This takes them both at the same time out of the same sensor. So you don't have any motion weirdness with it, but you get the beauty of the highlight detail and the shadow detail. And one of the side benefits of that is by having an exposure gain for detailed for the shadows, we have less shadow noise than we've ever had on our Cinema EOS cameras. So to get that full 16 stops of dynamic range is much more realistic now, in that you can really dig in the shadows, where in previous generations of cameras, you might run into some shadow noise at those very maximum dynamic ranges.
Okay.
So you really have a much cleaner file out of this as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm excited to really see that when it comes out. Does this camera shoot in log color?
It does. So log gamma is the technical way to say it. So different gamma settings are basically different. Easy way to think of them is there are different contrast ranges and brightness ranges. So there are different types of log settings, and every manufacturer has their own way of optimizing log for their own sensor. So you don't use another brand of log curve, another brand of camera's log curve with brand A with brand B camera. You always use a log curve designed for that by that camera manufacturer. That said, we've got 3 log curves in all of our Cinema EOS cameras. There's the original log, which is a 12-stop dynamic range. That's kind of been retired with our newest cameras like the C70. So this one has log 2 and log 3. Those will give you log 2 will give you the 16 plus stops of dynamic range, and log 3 will give you 14 stops of dynamic range. So some people ask, well, why would I want less? Why would I want to do the 14 instead of the 16? Just depends on your shooting application, frankly, and how much time you're going to put into post-production. Because anytime you do shoot with a log gamma curve, you have to do color grading after your shoot. And that means sitting down at the computer and adjusting the way the contrast is and the colors are. It's kind of like shooting a RAW file with a still camera. And a lot of people coming over from still photography to motion imaging will confuse a RAW file from a still camera with, there are RAW files for cinema cameras. You don't, and they think, well, the still camera had to shoot the RAW file to get the maximum dynamic range and the maximum editability out of the file. It works a little differently on the motion cameras, on the cinema cameras. The log gamma curves are really what give you that adjustability of the image. So this shoots does not shoot a RAW file, but to me that's not really a big deal, because RAW files, when you get into 4K, they're ginormous. For really any project that you would shoot of any normal length in 4K RAW, you're going to need terabytes of storage for every single project you do. And RAW, while it's a great tool for those who have the budget for something of a really high production value, again, it's a very expensive workflow. It's really not for everybody. This, however, with the XFAVC file, I can shoot up to 410 megabits per second, 422 color sampling, and a 10-bit file. So I could really take those log gamma curves and do pretty much anything I want to the file and have a really beautiful result.
Perfect. I was wondering, and I already know the answer to this too, but can you talk about the slow motion?
Slow motion. So in 4K, I can shoot up to 120 frames a second. So that's,
wow.
That's really great. I'm really excited about that. Then in 2K and HD, I can go up to 180 frames a second. So the camera has a full punch for slow-mo. So that's, like I said, I'm super excited.
Okay, so I saw another feature on this camera. It has built-in neutral density.
So all of our Cinema EOS cameras have built-in optical glass neutral density filters. So how we accomplish that is we put it in the body. And the flange depth or flange mount to sensor depth is very thin in this camera. It's the RF lens mount like we talked about. So it's a very short distance between the lens mount and where the sensor is. And I'm really stunned that the engineers were able to get filters in there like that, but they did it. So we have 5 ND filters in there, 2 stops, 4 stops, 6 stops, 8 stops, and 10 stops. So I should say 5 increments available in there. So it's a pretty remarkable thing that we're able to do that. And when you hit the ND, there's on the side here, there's ND plus and minus. So when you hit those, they flip in very quickly. They're much faster than our previous Cinema EOS cameras as far as how they flip in there. We also have an ability on the back to, and this is gonna be harder for me to do. Let's see if I can do it like this without you having to look at the top of my head. I'm not sure it's gonna be bright enough to show up on our Zoom video. I can have a new feature down here. It's an on-screen menu system where I just tap in the corner down here and it expands out into a menu where I've got all of my exposure controls right in front of me. I don't have to look for the buttons on the side. So it's a really well thought out system. I think Canon's engineers have been working overtime on really thinking this camera through.
Yeah, I like it. It seems like you guys asked the question to the shooters and basically gave us everything we've been asking for. This is fantastic. Now, I was going to ask you, Mike, I saw some specs about pro audio. This camera has pro audio. Can you tell me about that?
Excellent. And I should have really talked about that when you asked about the difference with the DSLR and mirrorless cameras. So I appreciate you asking that question. So on the side over here, we've got, again, our buttons and switches, as well as our terminals for the camera. So we've got 2 audio input terminals here. They are mini XLR. So for those of you not familiar with XLR inputs, professional level audio gear with higher quality will use what's called the XLR connection. It's just a 3-pin jack, and it's it has a locking feature to it. So they're very sturdy. They are balanced electronically. It's electronic term on audio with the balanced.
Is that a standard? Are those standard connectors?
It's the mini XLR.
Like standard mini connectors? Like
standard mini XLR, correct, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Indeed. So you can get the cables for the mini XLR. Some people may not be familiar with it. You can get adapter cables, or you can just get straight cables. So if you're going to a shotgun microphone on top of the camera, for instance, personally, rather than dealing with an adapter, I would just buy the cable that goes from mini XLR to the standard XLR that plugs into the mic. So, but you can do an adapter if you wish instead. That's just my personal take on the matter. But you've got the 2 audio inputs here. You've got audio controls on the back underneath where the screen usually lives. So I can do automatic or manual control. I can do mic level input, phantom powered mic, which is the 48-volt setting, or line level input. And line level input would be if you're coming off like an audio mixing board. Maybe you're shooting a music video or you're shooting a concert. That's a typical application. Or at a church shooting a wedding, coming off their soundboard. That'll be a line level input. But again, audio level controls here that are accessible the entire time you're shooting, so you can change those if you need. You've also got another mic input. Well, the mic input right below it's a stereo mini jack microphone connector, much like what you'd find on a DSLR or mirrorless camera. So if you do have audio equipment from your DSLR or mirrorless camera, you can use it on here straight away. Just plug right on in there. That is channels 3 and 4 for the audio. So you can have up to 4 channels of audio, and the menus allow you to break them out in different ways. If you're not using the stereo mini jack mic, the camera does have stereo microphones on the front. We refer to them as scratch track microphones because they're not big mics, they're not high-end mics. They're there for emergency situations sometimes, or maybe your other audio gear. Something happened to it perhaps. It's not your main audio, it's backup audio is the way I look at it. But if you don't have any other mic, you know, it's audio and it works.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that you guys put Pro Audio in there, because I can leave one of my pieces of equipment at home. My Zoom recorder doesn't have to come along with me anymore.
Absolutely. The while I'm over on this side, I suppose I'll just talk about the other connectors there as well. So right below the microphone input is a headphone jack, which we all know what that does. There's a remote control terminal. We have a high-end remote control box called the RCV100 that's great for remote camera positioning. You get full control over the camera. If you use you have focus control if you need, or even if you have a motorized zoom setup, which is a specialized lens. But if you have one of those on there, you can even control the zoom remotely with it. So that's pretty neat. There's a full-size HDMI plug down here at the bottom, so you can do your monitoring that way. The one thing the camera doesn't have on it is an EVF, or electronic viewfinder. Everything is through the LCD panel. So if you're going to do something outside in the bright sun, you're either going to want a hood or with a magnifier on it, or you could use a third-party EVF that will plug in the HDMI, and then you could have it either in the accessory shoe up here with on a little ball head, or on some sort of cage or something. There's lots of ways to do that for sure.
Awesome. I like those features. I'm really excited about it.
I'm gonna take a second here to turn my phone to airplane mode because I forgot.
You're good.
All right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that. I just noticed a feature that I've had more and more people ask about lately. People are coming in wanting to shoot Instagram videos. Tell me about what this can do.
So we have a vertical video feature in here, which, you know, to some people brings up feelings of why would anyone shoot vertical video? But for anybody on social media, you know exactly why. So
right.
This is our first cinema camera that really embraces this vertical video in this particular way. And that is, you can change the orientation on the camera for actually shooting vertical. I can go in the menus and have the menu show up appropriately or reading correctly in the vertical orientation. So when I shoot the camera like this, I can see everything appropriately. Now, if we're actually shooting like that, we have let's see if you can see it here, if I get the light correctly, there's a tripod screw hole right here in the hand grip. So that's why I loosened the strap.
Oh, wow. You guys really have thought of everything.
So you can mount the camera like this, and I can look at the menus appropriately in the vertical orientation and really shoot proper vertical video.
Awesome. Next question. What does it shoot to? What kind of memory?
Memory is pretty easy. SD cards, there's 2 slots here right in the hand grip for SD cards. Now it's not, depending on what you're going to shoot as to what level of card you need to have. We recommend the SD XC2 cards. Well, that's what you're going to need to have. Let me just put it that way. If it was me, I would just get all V90 cards. They are more expensive than the V60 cards, but it's, you know, if I don't want to have to play, you know, card sorting and looking at small cards and what they say on them when I'm shooting. I want to make sure I have all the cards that are the appropriate designation for anything I might want to do. So my recommendation personally would be getting all V90 cards.
Okay, perfect. Now what have we forgotten to talk about on this camera?
Oh my gosh. Let's look at the back on the camera. So back of the camera, I'm going to see if
that's good right there.
There we go. Perfect. So again, we talked about the audio controls already, but if you look over here, the back of the camera looks like the kind of the grip from a DSLR or mirrorless camera. We've got the control dial down here that many people will be familiar with. It's great for moving through the menus really quickly. We've got other buttons back here, such as the menu button, magnification button. And you'll notice, you may not be able to see it in the Zoom recording here, but pretty much all the buttons have a number on them. Any of the buttons that have a number on them on our cameras, you can reassign. You just go in the menu and say, I don't like what Canon made this originally. I want it to do this other feature. And it's a huge list of things that you can select from. And there's even some buttons on the front of the camera down low, which you couldn't see, even down here. And one of them even doesn't have a predetermined setting. It's not programmed from the factory. So my first one I'd program is this one because it's not doing anything else. So I can go to button 11 and say, in my case, I turned it into the auto ISO button, which is a great new feature on this camera I should bring up. This is our first Cinema EOS camera that has an auto ISO capability. Previously, you've always had to manually select ISO. And again, aimed at the run and gun shooter, we know there are plenty of situations where you can't stop and do that. You're shooting live. You need to be able to have an automatic ISO or auto gain while you're doing run and gun shooting. So I programmed that button to switch between auto ISO and manual ISO without having to go into any menus or anything like that. It's a quick one button hit for that. And you can do other things like face detection on and off. It's got great face detection autofocus. It's the new face detection autofocus system from our 1DX Mark III and our newest EOS R mirrorless cameras. It's wonderful in that it uses deep learning technology that Canon's looked at millions of images of faces and heads, and you can have someone in profile and it'll know that it's a head. You could have even the back of the head in a lot of cases, and the camera will know that's a head and will use that head for tracking if you wish. So it's a really sophisticated system, very powerful at detecting people, and wonderful system on that. That's a great update. But again, back to the grip over here, everything really is accessible with your thumb. When you get your hand in the grip, I can move around to every control back here with my thumb very easily. I've even got the joystick for going through menu operations, and I can do autofocus point movement with this and things like that. So it's a great layout on the camera. It is a solid handle. It's built kind of like the DSLRs in that it's a solid body all the way across. Our previous Cinema EOS cameras used a separate grip that would rotate, but for the sake of keeping the body small and very strong, we made it a rigid design on that. But again, that helps you make the camera small. So I certainly appreciate that. But I mean, there's programmable buttons all over the place. There's even one right here next to the record button. So again, you can reassign that. It's got a number on it. So very feature-rich camera. The camera does come with a top handle, which I don't have out here with me. It allows you to do if you're going to do a handle low-angle shooting, I could do that. You can mount a shotgun microphone on it up there. It also comes with the camera comes with an adapter where you can put the shotgun mic right on top of the camera itself if you want. As far as what comes with the camera, you get, of course, the camera. You get the battery, a BPA 30 battery, a charger, and the power supply for the charger also doubles as the AC power supply for the camera. So if you need to do
awesome.
a long recording inside, or even wherever you can run an extension cord, you can use that same power supply to run the camera itself. Everything you need comes with it. There's a larger size battery, a BPA 60 you can buy as an option. That will go for a long time. So our figures are just being published right now on the battery runtime, but it's many hours. Even on the BPA 30, I'm stunned how long the thing will run, frankly, and record. So it's a powerhouse of a little system, very easy to handhold. Image quality wise, you're dealing with the same recording file formats and bit rate as the XFAVC file in our higher end cameras like the C300 Mark III and the C500 Mark II. So you're going to get that same image quality you would get with one of those higher end cameras in a smaller package at a lower price point. And it makes a wonderful, if you already own one of those other cameras, it's a great B or C camera even. But I think for a lot of people, this is going to be a great A camera. It's just got so much power in it.
Oh, that's great. Okay, big question. What's the price of this new camera?
$54.99. So right under
okay.
$5,500. Very, very aggressive price point on this for the features that it has.
Okay, perfect. And last but not least, when is this camera releasing?
So the camera starts shipping in December. So the end of this year.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think we've covered a fair amount of info here. We're so glad to have you, Mike. That was some great information. If anybody who's watching wants to get on our pre-order list, once again, you can call us at 800-748-8200, or you can visit www.pictureline.com. Thank you so much for joining us.